have to go on the balance beam.
Hey everybody, welcome to Bible class for Wednesday. Today we're going to review just a little bit of what happened on Sunday, and then we're going to get past the cliffhanger that I left you with on Sunday. So if you remember, on Sunday Paul had been arrested. He'd been sort of in trouble with the Jews, but the Romans actually arrested him in a sense to protect him from the Jews. So then he went before the Sanhedrin and he was on trial there, and that's whenever he perceived Sadducees and Pharisees, and he knew they don't get along about the resurrection, so he spoke about the resurrection. That's why I'm on trial today, and then that caused this debate, and it was really pretty violent. And so the Romans took Paul back to the barracks. And then 40 plus Jews made this vow. They said, we will not eat or drink until we kill Paul. And that is when Paul's nephew was listening. And he heard what they had to say, so he went and warned Paul. And Paul sent his nephew to the commander, and the commander, this is where we left it, he says, don't tell anybody that you told me this. So today we're going to see what happens next. So that gets us to Acts chapter 23, verse 23 through 35. And you can tell here, Paul, he very narrowly escapes really the 40 men that planned to kill him. And he actually has this letter that goes to the governor, Felix. It says, this man, he was seized by the Jews, and they were about to kill him. But I came with my troops and rescued him, for I had learned that he is a Roman citizen. I wanted to know why they were accusing him, so I brought him to their Sanhedrin. I found that the accusation had to do with questions about their law, but there was no charge against him that deserved death or imprisonment. When I was informed of a plot to be carried out against the man, I sent him to you at once. I also ordered his accusers to present to you their case against him. So Paul, he went with, 200 soldiers, 70 horsemen, and 200 spearmen overnight all the way to Caesarea to go see the governor. So he escaped. The 40 men didn't actually kill him. But one of the things that makes me curious, why were the Romans interested in Paul's well-being? Why did they care? I suspect it's a twofold answer. One, Paul was a Roman citizen, and so it was important to the Romans to protect their fellow citizens. But the other one, and I think maybe this is more than that, I think it has more to do with God than with the Romans. If you remember, in Acts 23 verse 11, this angel spoke to him, as you have testified about me, God, in Jerusalem, so you must also testify in Rome. In other words, you've got to make it to Rome to be able to do that. So I think God had a little bit to do with this as well. Maybe primarily God was influencing the situation. So that gets us to Paul's trial before Felix, the governor. And that is Acts chapter 24. And I just want to bring a couple of things out from that chapter. Paul gets to make his defense, and the Jews come and they make their accusations against Paul, and they claim that he's a ringleader of the Nazarene sect. He's stirring up the whole world. But they don't seem to have any clear accusations to bring against him. They just make this charge against him without very specific evidence. So Paul gets to speak for himself, and he offers his defense. And he says that there's maybe one thing that he could have been claimed that he did wrong. And he said, I shouted, it is concerning the resurrection of the dead that I am on trial today. And that caused the disruption between the Sadducees and the Pharisees. He says, maybe I shouldn't have done that. But Felix, the one he went to go see, he listens to Paul. And I think it's interesting that he listens to Paul, and it says that he was afraid. So he sends him away. In other words, he seems to understand what Paul is saying, but he doesn't accept the gospel. And so Felix, he would keep Paul in prison for 2 years without any real charges against him. So 2 years in jail. That's a long time. Do you think it would be easy to feel like maybe God had forgotten you and just left you, and even though the angel came and spoke to you and said you got to go testify in Rome, that wasn't going to happen? You just feel abandoned? I think I do. I remember another person in jail for 2 years, Joseph. That's a long time to sit in jail and to feel forgotten. So it would be a challenge to maintain the faith that what God's angel told you really was going to come true. But that gets us to chapter 25. And I just want to read this. It's 12 verses, and they're really very interesting. So, chapter 25. 3 days after arriving in the province, Festus went up from Caesarea to Jerusalem. Now, it's important to know this. Felix was succeeded by Porcius Festus. In other words, Felix stepped down as governor, and now this new Festus governor is in place. So, he goes from Caesarea to Jerusalem, where the chief priests and the Jewish leaders appeared before him and presented the charges against Paul. They requested Festus, as a favor to them, to have Paul transferred to Jerusalem, for they were preparing an ambush to kill him along the way. They're always trying to kill Paul. Festus answered, Paul is being held at Caesarea, and I myself am going there soon. Let some of your leaders come with me, and if the man has done anything wrong, they can press charges against him there. After spending 8 or 10 days with them, Festus went down to Caesarea. The next day he convened the court and ordered that Paul be brought before him. When Paul came in, the Jews who had come down from Jerusalem stood around him. They brought many serious charges against him, but they could not prove them. Then Paul made his defense. I have done nothing wrong against the Jewish law or against the temple or against Caesar. Festus, wishing to do the Jews a favor, said to Paul, are you willing to go up to Jerusalem and stand trial before me there on these charges? Paul answered, I am now standing before Caesar's court, where I ought to be tried. I have not done any wrong to the Jews, as you yourself know. If, however, I am guilty of doing anything deserving death, I do not refuse to die. But if the charges brought against me by these Jews are not true, no one has the right to hand me over to them. I appeal to Caesar. After Festus had conferred with his council, he declared, you have appealed to Caesar? To Caesar you will go. Did you notice it said that the Jews could not prove any of the charges against Paul? Does that remind you of another trial done by the Jews, the Sanhedrin? Do you remember when Jesus was on trial before a very similar group of people? They brought in false witnesses making all these claims against him, but even then it says their testimonies did not agree. It's interesting to me that this seems to have a very similar feel to it. They tried to pit all these things against Jesus, who wasn't teaching what they thought he should be teaching, and so they wanted to silence him. Now Paul, he's doing these things, and they have all this accusations against him who's teaching something that they don't want him to be teaching, so they're trying to silence him. They killed Jesus. Now they want to kill Paul for very similar reasons. And this is where Paul finally says, I appeal to Caesar. So he is now about to make a very long and very dangerous journey to Rome. But that's where the angel told him, you must testify about me in Rome. So that's where he heads. So now I have an obstacle course that's set up. We're going to work our way through it, and it's going to help us review the things that happened in Paul's life. And I hope that it is something that will help you remember all of these events, because we need to make sure we remember God's word so that we can live by God's word. So let's go do that obstacle course. Okay, so here's the obstacle course. Now we had to be a little bit creative because we only have so many things to work with, but it's going to walk us through basically the story of what happened to Paul from the time he was arrested till he appeals to Caesar. So if you remember, it all started out in the temple. So this is our temple. So he goes in the temple, and in the temple he gets arrested. So I'm going to put on my chains here. And once I'm arrested, it takes me over to the barracks. So this giant tire is going to be our barracks. And at this point, I get to speak to the crowd as Paul, and I say, I'm not an Egyptian. I'm a Jew from Tarsus in Cilicia. At which point, my handcuffs come off, because I'm not quite arrested anymore. And then I explained to the crowd about my conversion. So I started off with my flashlight. The light shone around, and that caused Paul to be blinded whenever he heard from the Lord. So then I got to walk blinded to Damascus. So with my eyes closed, going to Damascus. Oh, there we are. Now I'm in Damascus, and that's when I'm still blind, and Ananias comes, and you'll probably see Miss Megan. And he lays his hands on Saul, and he says, Brother Saul, receive your sight. So then he can see again, and then he gets baptized. So I'm on my blue square here. And then the Jews, they shout, rid the earth of him, he is not fit to live. And so I go back to the barracks, I get put back in the chains once again, and I'm now inside the barracks. And the Romans are going to beat me this time. But that's whenever I said, wait, I'm a Roman citizen. So that makes them afraid. I get to lose my handcuffs. And then, if you remember, there's that plot against Paul where there's 40 men that wanted to kill him on a trip overnight. So he gets to go with the soldiers, and to simulate that, we have a balance beam. From the barracks in Jerusalem to Caesarea, I have to go on the balance beam. Ooh, crap. Then I'm in Caesarea, and once I'm here, I actually get to go before Felix, and then before Festus. And it's at Festus, I'm going to kneel before the throne of Festus and say, I appeal to Caesar. And that takes me all the way through the obstacle course. So we're going to try to do it quickly now.
Ready, set, go.
Get arrested. Oh! I dropped my own chains. I got arrested. They take me to the barracks. I'm not an Egyptian. I'm a Jew from Tarsus in Cilicia. Then I'm going to explain my conversion. The light shone around. Oops. I'm blind. I got to go to Damascus. There's a fence. There we are.
Brother Saul, receive your sight.
I can see. I got baptized. The Jews are upset now. Rid the earth of him. He's not fit to live. So I get rearrested, and I'm in the barracks this time. Now, I'm a Roman citizen. You can't beat me. And then the plot afoot. So I'm going to Caesarea. And then Caesarea, I get to kneel before. I appeal to Caesar. I did it. All the things that Paul went through, taking him from being arrested in the temple all the way to appealing to Caesar to make his journey to Rome. Maybe you can try your own obstacle course too.